Think you don't have enough capital to invest in real estate right now? You need to meet Kelly Fry. Too many women are waiting for permission, perfect timing, or perfect finances to get started. But tonight is for the women who refuse to wait. Kelly Fry is going to lift the curtain on her creative finance strategy. And good evening, Kelly.
Hello, Margot. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. Always love chatting with you and, of course, talking to all people, especially women, about real estate investing.
And you have so much value to share. So I want to say welcome to Club RVNU. And I am your host and founder of Club RVNU, Margot Drake. So we are going live on multiple social media platforms. If you are watching this on any of those platforms, feel free to comment. Let us know where you are tuning in from. We'd love to know what reach we have. And Kelly, by the way, is from all the way west over in Canada, British Columbia, to be exact, Vancouver.
Yes.
And Kelly, I would love to share just a little bit of your background with people so they understand how incredible you are and how lucky we are to have you as our guest on Club RVNU.
Well, basically, I grew up in Montreal on the east coast of Canada, home of the Montreal Canadiens, for those of you who are hockey fans. And I made my way out west. I had studied accounting at McGill University, had the opportunity through a connection to come here to finish my articling. And it didn't take very long working in accounting and tax for me to realize that I just didn't want to be scorekeeping for other people's success. That's how it felt working on tax returns for, entrepreneurs and wealthy people that basically hired us to do their compliance work. And so I was itching to start a business, and one of my friends said, pick one thing, anything, and just run with it. And so with another accountant colleague of mine, we started a clothing company called Maternal Instinct Wear, and it was a maternity clothing store for businesswomen because it had come to our attention. We were one of the first accounting firms to have a woman partner. She had become pregnant, and of course, the clothing options were just atrocious. So we embarked on this. We grew it so much so that we were selling on the internet in 1995 all over the world. We were sending boxes to women all over to try the product, and they would return what didn't fit them, in Hong Kong and all over. We had a catalog operation, and we were in Fit Pregnancy magazine in the US. And so we were sending out parcels every day. We were selling retail, and we ultimately had to start manufacturing and wholesaling, which really wasn't our strong suit. We weren't really the fashion industry kind of people. We were just entrepreneurs and accountants who understood what was needed in the corporate world. But the actual business itself was a niche business, and it was a non-recurring customer. So we spent a lot on advertising to try and get the customers, and we were always cash constrained. So we were pretty well living in poverty because we were always trying to build more inventory. We were young and, of course, maxing all the credit cards. And there came a point where people always wanted to target my customers for college funds. And I saw the opportunity to start making some decent income selling what we call in Canada RESPs, or Registered Education Savings Plan, so that the babies right at birth would have a college plan set up. And in Canada, the government would match 20% on top of what the parents were saving. So for me, this was an easy sell. And I started to make money again the way I had made as an accountant, because I had this lead generator base of clientele. So even though the clothing industry was getting tougher and tougher, and we were struggling with profitability there, at the same time, I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I realized I was a little bit despondent about the situation I was in, but I realized that I had to build assets and businesses to build true wealth, and I was actually on the right course. And so in the book, he talked about spending money on classes and training that teaches you how to be a real estate investor. So when I saw an infomercial on buying real estate with no money down, I was all in. Despite being maxed on my credit cards and lines of credit, I found a way to take a few courses, and then ultimately I started buying real estate. And that's how I bought my first property and then the subsequent properties. And then I became a mentor for Rich Dad Education because I was one of their students that had done well. I started traveling across Canada teaching people how to invest in real estate. And I ultimately got my real estate license, which I should have done much sooner. I had passed the exam much sooner, but I was talked out of it and told, oh, you can't be an investor and a realtor at the same time. And unfortunately, I listened. But then there came the day where I just thought, I'm going to do it. And from the second I got my license, my business took off because there was such a shortage of realtors that really understood investment real estate. And so I was able to monetize the knowledge I had built over the prior years with my own portfolio and all the contacts I had built, as a mentor. And, it was a great match for me. And it also gave me even more credibility with clients for joint ventures and for raising capital because they viewed me at a higher authority as a realtor, which was funny because I actually knew more as an investor, but it worked. And that's what brought me to where I am today.
So you skimmed over because you probably told the story so many times. There's like no emotion left. Maxed out credit cards, maxed out lines of credit, and you still found a way to invest in your education. You still found a way. So that's where I said, like, you don't have to wait. If you make a decision, you can act on it.
Well, there's so many stories I could tell of even in the last decade of situations where I had to borrow money from people for deals where I didn't get as high financing as I expected. And, it can feel stressful at the time, but the market moved so much in the last decade that had I not seized all those opportunities at times where nothing was lined up perfectly, I wouldn't be able to recreate those opportunities today. So, when you see an opportunity, you find a way and the universe opens up for you, and you just have to, well, in my case, be comfortable with debt. And I think my background as a CPA, I think people are conditioned to think that they shouldn't have debt, which is the wrong thing in real estate investing, because the more debt you have that's controlled and properly managed, I'm not talking about consumer debt here, debt on appreciating assets makes you wealthy and wealthier over time. And, that's one thing I try to teach people.
So good. So you are a chartered accountant, you are a realtor, you are a team owner, real estate investor. You bring this incredible mix of expertise to your day-to-day helping people with their homes and their investment property, sell and buy homes, sell and buy investment properties. You grew, before we move on, I want to make sure people fully understand you, and it's hard to tell these things about yourself. You grew your personal portfolio from 4 to 50 properties in under 4 years. And that was a long time ago, and it's continued to grow from there. Yes. You ended up mentoring over 200 investors across Canada through that Rich Dad education program. And on top of all of that, you are a top producing Keller Williams rainmaker in Greater Vancouver. And your team has consistently ranked top 10 since you began your career. And in the last few years, top 1% in your area. That is incredible.
Well, it's come with a lot of training that I've been exposed to that's really helped me, and a lot of great people that have shared their information. And, I'm a lifelong learner, and I take every possible bit of training I can to get better every day. And the one thing I learned when I started my real estate investing training, it sort of blew my mind. I had this postgraduate education, which was, great, but it doesn't teach you how to make money. And every nugget you get from learning in real estate, whether it be as a realtor or as an investor, you can make thousands of dollars from that knowledge. So I don't know why more people don't actually spend the money to, create their future.
Good question. And you're going to let them know you're going to lift the curtain on that tonight a little bit. I want to call out these 2 great books. Thank you so much for gifting to me. Oh, we have our live viewers checking in, saying hello, our Club RVNU guests.
I better put my glasses on so I can read any comments.
so Real Estate Action 2.0. And I have read all of these, by the way. And then From Ordinary to Extraordinary, which is a more female focused success stories from women investing in real estate. And you are featured in both of these books. So I wanted to thank you for gifting them to me and let you know that I definitely have read them, I think, multiple times.
Well, the one that's the conglomeration of the women investors is actually even better because it's a longer chapter and it's a more detailed explanation of my journey. And both of them were assembled and they're stories from real estate investors, basically. But yeah, it was quite emotional to prepare that chapter for the one with the women because I relived every moment in doing so.
And are these available on Amazon? You gifted them to me, so I didn't have to buy them, but
Yeah,
we'll
well,
include that.
the one with the women, it's under Liza Rogers, so you can find it quite easily on Amazon. Real Estate Action Group, it's probably available under Ozzie Jurock's name. So
Okay.
those two authors probably is how you'd find them. Or contact me and I can make arrangements as well.
Yes, and if you are on our email list, you will be getting the links to these in a follow-up email. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. Great holiday gift idea, right? All right, so this was a quote actually from one of these books, and I wanted to talk about it. Well, this was in the foreword, and I wanted to talk about it because it resonated, and I think it will really hit people that are watching. Vision is not enough. It must be combined with venture. It is not enough to stare up the steps. We must step up the stairs. Vaclav Havel. And so I loved that because you're going to talk next about what you actually did when maybe other people would feel like they can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Sure.
So, and I know before we move on to creative financing in action, this is pretty new. And if you're comfortable sharing a big piece of your real estate investing life and your story has to do with your rich dad.
For sure.
And to acknowledge him because he impacted you so much. Do you want to talk a little bit about him?
Absolutely. So I'll start with my first property and then it'll lead into my second property. That is how I met my rich dad, just like in the book. And I had read the book, so I knew right away that he was exactly like that. So for my very first property, I had my own business. I had good credit, but I didn't have good income. My husband had good income, but he didn't have good credit. Qualifying wasn't easy. I had taken courses. And so I was able to approach my mother, and my mother agreed to co-sign. She was a principal of a school. She had good income, and my parents were debt-free. So it was easy for her to add income at the time. I was looking at some properties very quickly, and I purchased a foreclosure in court. I had a brand new baby. She was 2 months old, and I was determined to have a house for my baby. I had enough training from the real estate investing to figure out how to buy real estate. I knew I had to get an appraisal. I knew I had to have an inspection. I knew I had to have a mortgage broker. So I went to court. I outbid the trigger offer that was in court, and I bought my first home. I had run the numbers. It was further out, way further out than I would have ever chosen to live. But I live in a very expensive market, Vancouver. And even back then, it was considered expensive. Relative, it's way higher now. But I left kind of a very bougie area where I had my store, and I went to, a much further out area to buy a house. And we moved into the basement suite. It was a foreclosure, so it was kind of beat up. My husband bartered hockey training services in exchange for trades to come in and renovate the house. I was able to rent the upstairs, which was 3 bedrooms, 1 or 2 baths, and that rent covered our entire mortgage, taxes, and insurance. So we lived in the basement suite, which was unrenovated and like with very little furniture, for free. And that was a fundamental piece of this to keep going. And so that property went up in value fairly quickly. And so before long, I was able to refinance some equity to buy the next property. But before that happened, I was calling from the newspaper, the local newspaper, and the gentleman who answered, his name was Frederick, and he was selling condos. And what I didn't know was that he had built the building. he actually owned half of the building because the market had turned, and so he was renting them out or selling them himself, not even with a realtor. This is an extremely wealthy individual. And I asked him from my training, would you consider carrying financing? And I thought in my mind, like I learned in the course, he would carry a second mortgage maybe. But he actually was willing to carry a full first mortgage for me. So this was like crazy to me. And I agreed, and I went to my mom, and she gave me the down payment money at the time, which was a fairly small amount. And we agreed to joint venture on this property. And so he carried the mortgage. I asked him for 30-year amortization. At the time, it was more 25, but I was trying to make the numbers work. And he let me show it before I even completed on the purchase. So I got a renter right away. And he was pretty impressed with the fact that I mitigated any risk and did that.
So you did so many things outside of the box, and you just asked. You asked if you could have 5 more years. You asked if you could show someone so you weren't empty. You had someone leasing. So you just asked. You took action and you asked. And I want to reiterate, you're a mom on top of all of this. You've got 2 amazing kids.
Yes, so I was bragging. Well, when I went to go see him the first time, she was a toddler. I remember I have pictures of her sitting on the counter in the condo, and, he was quite taken by her. And I think, he wanted to help me. So, I was a mom at the same time. But I think the drive for me always was I had to do better for my children. I had to take these risks because I had to elevate the family. It wasn't like my kids were just dragged into everything all the time. Like even open houses, they were sitting on iPads. I mean, I always included them, but I always saw the future, and I always saw what they could have in the future if I just got the information and I took the action.
And you did. You did. So Frederick is your rich dad.
Yeah. So Frederick is my rich dad. He was a very wealthy individual that came to Canada as an immigrant, went to become a realtor for a short time, became a developer, was one of the first people that started the concept of building condos here. And he built and sold properties and then acquired a lot of real estate. And he basically lived off the passive income of his buildings, the classic rich dad scenario. And he became a hard money lender for me. He would lend me money when there were deals. We would split the profit. He was a source. I think what's so important is I have really good parents, but they don't have the same level of thinking that he had. And so, my parents might say, well, money doesn't grow on trees. But every time I was around Fred, money just grew on trees. Like everything was different, and it was just, he was just different. And I saw a different way of living when I was with him. And I sort of copied, even to this day. He passed away in November. He's been ill for the last 2 years or so. And I forgot what I was saying.
Well, I am so sorry.
Everything that he did, like he walked for an hour every single day. I think that's why he lived so long, because he made it to 94. He was just, he weighed himself every day. He was so disciplined. So if he was up a pound, he wouldn't eat dinner. And, he would make sure he got his walks in every day. He would lift weights. So I try to replicate as much of everything I learned from him beyond even just real estate.
He had good habits all around. He had
very good habits, yes. And he always taught me, and I think about it all the time, never put yourself in a position, like always be in a position of strength. Always make decisions from a position of strength. So even when I'm leveraging all the time and with money and all kinds of things in real estate, I always think, okay, how can I do this to protect myself so, I mitigate the risk.
And you brought up a really good point. The way he thought was different.
Yes.
And our book right now that we are reading as part of Club RVNU is Think and Grow Rich, because it's all about your thinking and how that impacts every single part of your life. Well, we are all so sorry for your loss. I know he was just a huge force in your life and still is.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that his wife and I have a good rapport, and I continue to be in contact with her. And obviously she was with him for 40 years. She's a little bit younger. And so I still have the ability to be exposed to her and to learn from her. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah.
So important to surround yourself with the right people. So I want to take a minute before we dive into the next piece and remind everybody that Kelly and I will be talking and sharing these ideas on creative financing. Kelly telling her story from 6 until 7 tonight. You're welcome to put your questions in the comments at any time. We're going to wait until the last 15 minutes to answer them. That's the benefit of being live, is that you can get your questions answered by Kelly herself. And stay for the mastermind. So this part is public. It's being live streamed everywhere, but it was really important for me to create a private, safe space for women to gather, mastermind, and help each other learn how to calculate, learn how to track, and learn how to grow their net worth. And you're telling them exactly how to do that, Kelly, with no excuses. There's no excuses.
Exactly.
There's a different way to think. And I think, Kelly, did you say you are going to be joining us today for that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That is huge. So that is
that.
private. You do have to RSVP for that. If you are watching, make sure that you go to any of the posts or revisit your email, get in the Zoom. And Steve is putting the clubrevenue.com. You can go there and RSVP as well. So I wanted to give a little plug for that. That's huge that you're joining us. So exciting. Okay, so let's talk about what creative financing really means. Like, let's talk about those. You were house hacking. You weren't calling it house hacking back then, right? That was a newer term, like your very first.
Yeah, I mean, possibly that's right.
And you were willing to live outside of town. You had to make some sacrifices. You were living outside of town. You weren't living in the main hub, maybe where you wanted to live. You went outside of town. You were living in the smaller, unrenovated part.
Yes.
And your renter was covering all your expenses.
Yes.
Now, you also weren't cash flowing. You were just getting your expenses covered, correct?
Yeah. So I was living for free, and then it enabled me to put my daughter in private school. And I was selling the RESPs, so I had the commission income from that while I was trying to figure out how I was going to get out of this debt of at least almost $200,000 in my business, right? So,
wow.
But I mean, what the crazy thing is that the real estate that I bought got me out of all the debt. Like, you have to go into more debt sometimes to get out of the debt. That was the problem. So, yeah, I think I acquired about 4 properties fairly quickly after I got the training, and those properties went up substantially. And one day when I was sitting in my shop, I was thinking, my maternity shop, how am I going to get out of this? Because as a CPA, I would lose my designation if I filed bankruptcy. So I knew it wasn't an option. And I realized that my $60,000 line of credit that I had in the business, if I just changed the name of the business, the bank would never call it because they just accrue the interest on it every month. So I started to think of ways. Once I thought of that one day, I was like, oh, I can get out of this. I'll liquidate everything on eBay. I'll keep the line of credit active. And I started calling my suppliers, and they started agreeing to take their inventory back or giving me a discount, because I didn't really want to mess with any of my suppliers. So I wanted to do everything the right way. And so by doing all of that, I just changed the name of the business from Maternal Instinct Wear to High Performance Investments. And from that day forward, I just started focusing on being a full-time investor.
You just changed the name of your business, and you used the same line of credit that you already had.
Yeah, so I just had to service the interest on it, which wasn't that high. So I knew I could manage.
And failure wasn't an option, because you would lose your designation. Really. So you were doing everything you could to make sure that didn't happen. So your first was a house hack situation. Your second was an investment with Frederick. You quickly bought, sounds like, 2 more.
Yeah. So then, well, the next one, the third one was a triplex, and it needed a lot of renovation. I mean, honestly, I wasn't even thinking, I think at the time, I was just doing things. So I had to renovate the units for the value to go up. And I was actually taking cash advances off my credit cards, which I think most people would probably not be comfortable with that, but I didn't really have an option. So that's what I did. And then what happened was once I forced the value up and fixed the units and got them rented, it jumped from, I think I had paid about $202,000 for it, and it jumped up to over $400,000 in value. So I was able to take the equity gain and like pay off all the credit cards. It rolled it into a mortgage and then paid off some of the business debts. And yeah.
And move forward. So that
And
was
I used money from house number one. I convinced my mom to let me refinance that. So I was able to take out money from the first foreclosure house for the down payment of the triplex.
You're just making all kinds of money moves. And you're thinking outside the box. Every step of the way, you're thinking outside the box. What's so remarkable about you, Kelly, is you think, I have to do this. And there's no straight path from point A to point B. You're thinking every which way that you can get to point B, even if it's not straight.
Yes. And I think one thing that people don't always understand, I mean, they saw me with, like the realtors that have seen me join the real estate business and I've had success, and, you know, they say things to me like, well, you know, we never had extra money to buy a rental and this and that. And I just turn to them and I say, I drove an old car. I didn't take vacations and I didn't have furniture. Like, it's not like I was living like they were, you know. And even at that time, I was a top agent. I was driving an old car. They would like constantly harass me because, you know, typically agents drive fancy cars. But my clientele at the time was predominantly investors, and it doesn't really impress investors to drive a fancy, expensive car. Like, they're more interested in what's your cash flow, what's your net worth, what deal do you have, right?
You made some big sacrifices, which, I mean, so Kelly, you'll love this story. Last month at Club RVNU, I let everybody know about an off-market deal of 5 acres in a very desirable neighborhood that had a modular home on it that could be split into 2 lots. So there was just a huge opportunity. When we went to visit the place, we found out like a studio apartment situation in an outbuilding. So I put my Kelly Fry hat on, just like, okay, how can we look at this? And I let my investors know about this before it got on the market, but you have to be creative and you have to make sacrifices. And I actually said, Kelly Fry would live in the garage studio situation. She would live out there. She would rent out that house until she could develop the back. And then that's the way Kelly would roll. So thank you for helping me think outside the box. And then when it did hit the market, it sold same day, all cash, full price. Like, it's just, there were 2 cash offers same day. So you have to get ahead of it. You have to be creative. You have to take sacrifices. I love hearing about your home and your car, because those are big things for people that they're not usually willing to negotiate on. Mm-hmm. And you are. And that's why you are in the position that you are today. So Tracy Johnson is here. She is asking about a DSCR loan. So we can get to those.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what a DSCR loan is. So is that an American term?
So yeah, it must be, and it is the property qualifies for the loan, not you. So you don't have to submit W-2s. You don't have to submit tax returns or pay stubs. The lender just looks at the rental income from the property that it can.
Well, we, here in Canada, I don't know if you may have heard, but like, we have much tighter financing regulations. We only have 6 chartered banks in the country, and we did not have a crisis to the extent that the US did in 2008, 2009, because we never had ninja loans or that kind of thing, right? So I can't say that I've ever had a DSCR loan myself. In terms of other creative financing, I would say that generally speaking is if you can get the seller to carry as a vendor take back, that's one form. If you have partners like joint venture partners that come in and either qualify or go on the deal with you, that's another type of creative financing. Using in Canada, we call our registered retirement savings plans. We use those for mortgages as well. And I know you can in the US if you have them set up properly with the right institutions, and they're, they have to be sitting in liquid cash, obviously, to be able to do that.
And another thing I want to point out about you, I was looking through all of our pictures together.
Yeah.
We're all at events where Kelly is constantly investing in her education too.
Yes.
Thank you, Cameron. Debt service coverage, loan, DSCR is obviously the acronym.
Yeah, because even here in Canada, even on multifamily investments, we still have requirements for net worth and liquidity. You can't just qualify to buy a property just on the basis of the rent.
So it could be easy.
But you can. We have one of my bigger buildings. We were able to get a mortgage. It was the first time we were able to get it right at the time of purchase, my partners and I. But we had to bring on someone that was like a very strong net worth individual and add him to the application for us to qualify. And we gave him, I think, 5% ownership in the building just for that purpose, to have him on the qualification.
So I think that was one of those stories where you were trying to get a deal done, and that was one of the ways that you were able to get the deal to the closing table.
Yes.
You figured it out.
Yeah, no option really, right?
Okay, so it sounds like you have taken on a lot of risk over the years in your property. So how have you been able to manage that risk so it doesn't take a health toll on you? How do you manage that?
Well, I think it's all in how you assess risk. So I'm kind of an anomaly in that I'm a CPA who takes a lot of risk, because the profile of most CPAs is that they're very risk averse. But that training gives me the ability to assess what the risks look like in numbers. So it puts me more at ease. The model that we've been programmed with to have a good job, and to rely on that income alone is very risky to me. It's risky to me not to buy real estate as an investment, because when I look at inflation right now, and I look at especially real estate, you can predict, okay, this is what the appreciation should be. This is what the pay down of the mortgage from the tenants should be. This is what the cash flow should be. You can say, okay, I want to acquire 5 or 10 properties for retirement, and you can buy them one after another in different ways. And you can say, I'm going to have this much net worth in 20 years or whatever the period of time is. I take great comfort in that versus just gambling on a job and not taking the risk.
And that job might not be there. Yeah. I mean,
the job might not be there. The whole industry might be gone. And for women, I'm pretty passionate about this, because I do not believe that a man is a financial plan, and being married does not guarantee anything. And women outlive men as well, and they have to know how to manage the money side of everything, and they have to understand. I think one of the biggest mistakes my rich dad made was he did not involve his wife in the complexity of the portfolio. And after he became ill, she was like drowning every night till like 2 a.m, handling all the buildings, handling the government taxes, handling the filings, the property management. Had she been involved earlier on, she would have had the muscles and the skills to be able to deal with it. And so she's done a great job, and she's like so much further ahead now. But yeah, it was very taxing on her, and she's very intelligent. So he picked a good partner, but it would have been better if she had been more involved.
Are there any other, before we move on to the future and what you see, are there any other creative, interesting stories that you want to share that come to mind? I know you've done so many deals, just to get people's creative juices flowing and maybe a different way.
I could get in trouble, but yeah, I'll tell some of them. But honestly, you have to have nerves of steel to do some of these things I did. So I saw this ad in the paper, because back in the day we had the paper, to buy this condo for no money down. And so I agreed to buy this property, and they were doing some creative credit cash back scenario. No, you have to understand I wasn't a realtor then, so I wasn't regulated like I am today. So I was running free. So this condo was right downtown Vancouver, and this investor had some kind of an in with one bank, and basically they were arranging, they put the price up on the property by the amount of the down payment by 5 or 10%. And so the mortgage was going to be lent on the gross total, which meant that there would be no real cash to be paid. However, along the one of the problems was I had a lot of debt on my credit card still because I was coming out of my business, right? So I had to clear up like $46,000 of debt on my credit card to be able to pull this off. So I called my dad, my poor dad, who's not like rich dad, but still smart. And so he lent me the money so that I could clear off these debts. And I said, look, I'll pay you back in a week because I can redraw cash advances right back off. And I wasn't a realtor back then that had the capacity to make large amounts in a short time like I can now. So I did that. But then I get told, you need to go to this particular lawyer's house and you need to bring $4,000 cash for the mortgage broker that put this together. So I knew that was kind of shady, but I was in so deep at that point. So I'm driving to the house and I call my friend. I said, listen, if I go missing, like I got $4,000 here. I'm going to this house to sign for these documents, but it's very shady. So he says, okay. And so I go there and I say to the lawyer, okay, I've got the cash. And he says, what cash? I said, well, I was told to bring you this cash. So he says, oh, I don't know anything about this. Picks up the phone, calls them. And then he says, oh, okay, yeah, I'll take it. And he puts all the cash across the table, the $4,000. And I signed and I got the condo and nothing ever happened. And then a few years later, and it was furnished, so I was running as a furnished rental and it was always full. A few years later, the bank starts calling me, wanting to talk to me about my mortgage because I suspect they had an audit or something and they had uncovered that this guy on the inside was doing this. So I was sweating bullets. I said, I don't know what to do. So I called Rich Dad and I told him the situation. And he said, oh, that's nice of them to invite you to the bank. He says, you send them a letter, an email, and you tell them that you're out of town traveling and, you know, you'd be happy to meet them in the future. And he basically calmed me right down and just, you know, said, the fact that they overlent to you is not your problem. It's their risk. But he said, do not go into the bank. So it all worked out. In the future, I had to sell it because I fell on harder financial times. So I wish I still owned it today. But that was my fourth property purchase.
We all have those stories that we wish we still had, and we sold at a certain point. So look at that. There was so much going on in your head in the beginning, fear holding us back. And, you know, I love the fact that you even think differently about normally people don't think that a W-2 9-to-5 job is risky. And in your mind it is. Mm-hmm. And you are thinking very differently. So I love that about you. Okay, so we are going to move on to the future. Where do you see creative financing opening up?
Well, I mean, I can speak to my market here where it is. I know that the different parts of the U.S. are all different, but I think that as people are selling businesses, the baby boomers are wanting to exit their businesses, they're going to have to carry financing to buyers. I think that, you know, a lot of people are going to have more difficulty buying detached homes because they've become so high priced. You know, we're in an extremely expensive market here, and so they're going to have to be creative, either with their kids to help them get into properties, or for selling purposes, they're also going to have to carry financing. And there's a lot of distress.
Actually, Kelly, that's a really good point. You are in a totally different market. So just to give people an idea of how different our markets are and how you're buying there still, what's the average sales price of a home, a detached home in the greater Vancouver area? I know it depends.
Conservatively, it'd be 1.5, and that would be, you know, in the suburbs. There are areas where it's 4 million in west side of Vancouver, and then 6 to 8 million, and then where Rich Dad lived. So
that's single family.
Yeah, single
right?
family. And then if you go out to the furthest spot, like an hour and a half drive from Vancouver would be Chilliwack, Abbotsford, you're still talking $1 million for a home, maybe 900 right now.
So West Michigan, you can get excited because again, it's different in different areas, but our single family home, we're at about 350, 370
Yeah.
for our average sales price. So we're a fraction of what Kelly has been picking up properties for. And she's been doing it consistently. Oh, I love what Cameron added. We have sellers offering seller financing to help with the sale, and you were alluding to that.
And I found, like, I know when you're a newer investor, you don't believe this, and I heard it when I was a new investor, but my gosh, it's so true. If you find a deal, there's always money for a good deal. And you have two options. You can either, well, you can always lock it up, like secure it with a contract with conditions, but you can either find someone to joint venture with you, or you can sell that contract for an assignment fee and be what we call a wholesaler, a deal finder, or a bird dog. So, yeah, there's always people running around looking for deals. People, even as a realtor, people are always looking for deals with me, asking me. But money is the least of the problems. It's so many people have so much capital they like to deploy. And I started borrowing a bunch of money in the last few years from people because I had opportunities, and I had a situation with a bunch of apartment buildings that I was involved in where people wanted to like cash out or partners wanted out. And I had to start getting money fast to buy them out because Rich Dad was in my mind. Like, I want to be like him. I want to own the buildings like him, not letting this go because a lot of the rules have changed since when we acquired the buildings. When we acquired them, and my first building I acquired in 2016, you were allowed to what we call rent evict. So evict all the tenants, renovate the building, and then put in new tenants at higher rents, and then you raise the value of the building by raising the net operating income. But our government here, our provincial government, is very anti-investment and anti-eviction. So they changed all the rules in 2018 when we were just in the middle of buying 3 buildings. So thankfully, we took those opportunities in 16, 17, and 18 because we could not replicate that today. But I did have to borrow all this money from various people. And so I do make payments every month to all these people that helped me, and they keep wanting to give me more money. And I'm just like, that's okay. Like, the real estate market's a bit rough right now. Really rather not take any more money right now. And then some people I'm trying to pay back, and they're saying, we've really appreciated the opportunity. And if there's any other deals that you need money for, just let us know. And, I would never have believed this 10, 15 years ago, that it could be that easy.
So, do you want to read Cameron's comment?
Just write the damn offer, Kelly. Yeah. So my current house, he wants to get acknowledgement for this. So I found out about this house. It was 2021. It was exactly what I wanted. It was a realtor posting in a Facebook group saying, does anybody know how to sell a house that they can't put on the market? No sign. So I responded. I said, yeah, just send me the info because investors don't really care too much. It's fine if it's not on the market. When she sent me the info, I thought, oh my God, this is exactly what I want for my family. So I was hemming and hawing, what do I do? Because with a complicated portfolio, it can be difficult to get a mortgage approved because it's just so many calculations and it's not fast. And it was a time when there was multiple offers everywhere, but this was an off-market deal. So Cameron said, just write the damn offer. You're acting like a fool. Like, you're acting like a client right now. Just lock it up. So I said, okay. So I put the offer in, and then I said, okay, I got to figure out financing. What do I do? He said, just call Rich Dad. Why don't you just ask him? I said, okay, that's a good idea. So I called him, and I'd never asked him for my personal principal residence. And so when I called him, he said, yes, no problem. So within 5 minutes, I had the deal, I had the financing. And so he let me have the money for 6 months, which gave me ample time. I sent in renovators to renovate the basement suite so I could Airbnb it. There were tenants upstairs and downstairs, so they didn't want the tenants to know. So I bought it, and so the downstairs, the tenants left, got that rolling before I ever moved in, and then 6 months later, the tenants upstairs, their lease was up, we moved in upstairs, and then at that time, I got a proper bank mortgage, paid Rich Dad out, and he didn't even charge me the payments. Like, he made it all one gross amount at the end of the 6 months, so I didn't have to make payments while I was collecting the Airbnb revenue, which was great.
And so who you surround yourself matters because look at that. I mean, Cameron just nudged you when you needed a nudge. And I love that story. And your rich dad was there for you. And he probably made a nice return, and he was happy to do something nice, help you. I mean, that probably made him so happy to be able to do that for you.
Yes.
And so, and while I'm driving back and forth to Detroit to visit my mom, I'm calling Kelly because she's 3 hours behind. So sometimes on a late night, I'll call Kelly. And one time I called you and you were scrambling to find money. You were talking about finding money. And I was like, what are you doing finding money? Like, tell me about it. And you said, these people want to exit and I want to buy up their shares. And I was like, yes, I love that. And that, again, you're just around people thinking differently. Instead of thinking, oh my gosh, one of my investors wants to pull out and this is going to kill the deal or do something negative, you're looking at it from a place of strength and opportunity. And how can I make this work for that person who wants to exit, who maybe needs cash, and me, because you're in a great position, and then you could have more ownership in whatever deal you were talking about.
More control. Yeah.
How can women prepare? How can women prepare to use some of these strategies?
Well, I think, it's very important for women. I find sometimes women shy away from financial things, and it's so critical. Like, women have to have their own credit, and it has to be as good as possible. They have to have credit cards. Like, when you're a new investor, some of these training courses that I was in, they would teach you to have a bunch of credit cards. And the reason being is because if an opportunity comes up and you want to tie something up, you have to put a deposit down. So even if you don't have the liquid cash, you can use your credit. And if you don't have a line of credit, I mean, it's ideal to have all of the above. But women need to have their own finances separate. They need to have their own credit. They need to have groups of investors to be around them. They need to study this stuff. They need to go on webinars. They need to read books. They need to take training. And they need to control their future, because we never know what's going to happen. I mean, my husband was very ill last year, and I didn't know if he was going to make it. And I did not live with the fear of what will happen. A lot of women, when they lose their spouse, they can't even keep their home. And, that was never something that I worried about. I just worried about losing him. And I just wish more women would not give up the control of their finances. It's so critical that they can be the ones that. I just had someone tell me today that there's a problem with a property I'm selling with the tenant, and the tenants wanted to buy a place. And I guess everything was in the husband's name. So now they went to go get approval for the mortgage. She's not going to be able to add anything to the application. And in our market, it takes both spouses most of the time to qualify. So that leaves them in a bad situation when they don't have their own credit.
Kelly, by you doing everything that you've done, you gave yourself freedom to, when Peter needed you, you had one thing to worry about, and it was Peter.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything else.
Well, no, I did have a real estate business to worry about, let's be honest. but
you weren't worried about, like you said, you weren't worried about, oh my God, what's going to happen to me financially? I mean.
Well, I've seen it, my parents have been married 58 years, and I've just seen it happen to their friends. And it's just so sad.
So it takes work, it takes sacrifice, and it takes focus. But that's why I created Club RVNU. So you can show up every month and be surrounded by people like Kelly and the other Club RVNU members, and slowly but surely get yourself.
And the thing too, if I think about the various mentors that I've had and that I still have, I think every single one of them was men. And I think that they really respect a woman who's got some game that's trying to make a difference. They are so supportive, and a lot of times they have access to the money and they will help you. And just use that edge that we have. They're charmed by us. So just let them help you.
That's true, because they might have females in their life that they wish that this that person would be empowered, or maybe they might have little girls that they want to see grow up and do what you're doing. So you never know unless you ask. And Kelly Fry, you are not afraid to ask for.
No, and like, with my daughter,
Yeah.
I made sure she started working at 14. I said, I don't want you ever dependent upon a man for income. I want you to learn the skills, be in the market. And, she, by 18, because where we are, you have to be 19 to get a credit card, but where my parents live, you have to be 18. So we started getting her credit cards at my parents' address. And, she probably has at least 6 or 7 now, and she's 24 years old. And she just understands that it's a tool. And even some of her friends, if they need to change tires on their car, they're crippled, they don't know what to do because they don't have the money. And she's like, you just have to get credit cards, you just have to be creative. And she put money down on a pre-sale. She was at a trade show with me selling condos, and she gets it. And I made sure. Yeah.
That is great.
And now she got a joint venture partner to go with her in on it too. Now the project itself might not be going ahead, but it doesn't matter because their money's protected and she's still going to get it back, and then we'll put it in something else. But for her to take that step.
Let's paint a picture for Ashley. Ashley is in college or in college?
She graduated business school and entrepreneurship, and she's the president of her dad's company right now, running his business. And she just did a deal pitch in Boston because another company approached them to partner with them on something. I was so proud of her. She was sending me pictures of herself in her suit that she bought. And she went with one of the other team members and flew there to do the pitch. So
the apple does not fall far. Kelly, that is so great. So she is just starting her life, starting her career, running her dad's company, watching you. She's been involved in you've been involving her throughout her entire life, and she took action, found some money to partner with, and is doing a pre-sale. Do you want to explain to people that may be newer to investing what pre-sales are?
Yeah, so we used to, the market's changed a little bit here because of a lot of government intervention, but previously the way it would work with condo buildings, 4 to 6 story wood frame condo buildings that could be anywhere from 60 to 90 units, the developers will put out the renderings, and investors can purchase the units 2 years in advance. We don't have a very harsh winter here. So our cycle from the time the sales start till completion is about 2 years, 24 months, sometimes shorter. So an investor comes in and puts as little as 10% down. And so if the price is 300,000, for instance, it would be 30,000 down. Sometimes it's staggered deposits. Sometimes you can negotiate differently. In the case of the one that she found, it was a little further out, and it was 250,000. So she had to put down 25,000 over the course of 3 payments. But she and her joint venture partner, split that. And so in 2 years, it's supposed to complete. But because of some of the stalls in construction here and the sales, et cetera, we're not sure if this one is going to still proceed. But like I say, generally speaking, that's how it rolls out. So then at the end of the 2-year period, and just prior to that, people have the opportunity to sell their contracts so they can make a profit on their contract, which is an assignment of contract, or they can just complete on the purchase. And then at that point, they can put a tenant in and keep it as a rental, or they can turn around and resell it once they've completed on it if it didn't sell on an assignment prior to closing.
So this is a 20-something that did not have $25,000 laying around, spread out on her desk.
Yeah.
She figured it out.
Yeah, she figured it out. And I mean, I'll just give her kudos for her joint venture partner. This kid is a year younger than her. He started a company. He did my website for my real estate business. Then he got into AI. Then he started landing contracts with the biggest sports team. They were basically using the AI to help the sports teams. Like I don't know if it was New York was the first one he landed, baseball team, to help them figure out how to sell more to the consumer when they were at a ball game. And so next thing you know, his company gets purchased, he gets cashed out, and he gets headhunted on LinkedIn for 200,000 US salary. The kid's 23 years old, and that's her partner, joint venture partner on that deal. So she hangs around with him. They run a podcast, and they're both entrepreneurs, right? And she met him in school.
Oh, way to go. Wow.
So I always try and learn AI stuff from him because he's just a wealth of information.
So great. Kelly, any final thoughts that you want to leave? And you know what? I've dubbed you my rich mom.
Thank you.
That's your title.
Appreciate that.
So any final thoughts you would like to leave our viewers before we put a bow on this episode?
I think, if I were to go through any of my deals and explain them to people, especially my first apartment building, we did so many things wrong and we kept messing up and we kept fixing it. And then we'd find someone that would give us a tip and then we'd figure it out. And I never had all the answers. I just had a sort of a vision and I had some training and I knew people and I just kept failing till I succeeded. And I think that we're raised in school to always, not get the red pen and not make the wrong answer. But really, in the world of business, and Rich Dad talks about this, the book itself, Rich Dad's Advisors, you're rewarded for failing in business. Not the people that you learn the most and you have the most growth through failure. And don't be afraid to do that. Don't be worried about how you look, and find a deal and you can find someone to partner with you or get advice. And don't not do it, because time goes by quickly, and you have to have a financial plan for your future as you get older, when your energy is lesser. So real estate is a hard asset that also is a hedge against inflation. It rises in value with inflation.
You're dropping gold nuggets the whole way through, Kelly. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your time. Thank you for taking time out of your very busy day to join us for this portion of Club Revenue, which is public. Everyone can watch. And Kelly is also going to be joining us for our private mastermind. So if you're just tuning in and you'd like to join, just go to go to clubrevenue.com. You can still get there through growingrevenue.com, but go to clubrevenue.com. You can sign up for the 30-minute mastermind. It is free to women who want to grow their net worth and surround themselves by other women that have the like mindset. People are saying, thank you for joining. I learned a lot, and
thank you, Margot, for the opportunity. It's always great to talk to women and to talk to you.
Thank you. And we will definitely, when the replay goes out, we will definitely link to these two great books that you are in. Okay? All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining live, everybody.